All right, let's go ahead and get started. So first, we're going to cover the $418 million settlement. We're going to cover the key terms of the settlement, about how that impacts you as agents and kind of what you need to know going forward. And I'm going to get through these first ones really quickly and get more into the meat and potatoes of it. But you guys know there was a class action lawsuit. It was against the National Association of Realtors and some large brokerage firms. And the sellers were suing, saying, hey, we shouldn't pay a buyer's agent commission. You guys have conspired to keep the fees high. And I apologize, my phone is going crazy where people can't get in. And we got to make sure that we're not paying people to negotiate against ourselves. So right now, that lawsuit is just Burnett versus Berkshire. Looks like everyone else is settling. Berkshire Hathaway has enough money. Buffett can do whatever he needs to. But Remax settled for 55 million. Anywhere, which owns Coldwell Banker, settled for 83. Then Keller Williams settled for 70, and now NAR settled for 418 million. And at the end of the day, jury verdicts can be wild. So the jury found the defendant guilty for $1.8 billion. And there's something called treble damages. I always call it triple, but it's treble. So it could be $5.4 billion in damages. That's a lot of money, even for a big organization like the National Association of Realtors. So they looked at everything. They looked at appealing, and appealing leaves a lot of uncertainty and can take years. So now we at least have some certainty. And at the end of the day, some of these things probably needed to be done anyway. So they looked at appealing, they chose not to. And they also looked at Chapter 11 reorganization, which would have protected them, but not all of their other members being sued. And also the Department of Justice wants commissions decoupled. So I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but if the government is going to go out there and decouple commissions anyway, if the National Association of Realtors can settle a lawsuit and accomplish this goal where the government doesn't go in and impact that anyway, makes a lot of sense to kill two birds with one stone. But the Department of Justice rejected a court settlement, and they basically say down in here that they want to make sure that the commissions are decoupled, and that was coming anyway. So take a look at any of that you want to research. But at the end of the day, this is going to protect all of us, is going to end the lawsuits, and we can focus on what we've been doing. So for the next steps, it's going to have court approval, which most likely will be approved. Stay up to date. The best place to go is competition.realtor. So at competition.realtor, that's where you want to go to get the latest updates from NAR. There's going to be lots of people talking about it, but from our standpoint, lots of good information there. And here's my message to all of you: adapt and stay focused. We always have to adapt. People make money in every market. We've adapted to bad markets, good markets, limited inventory, buyers markets. We're going to adapt. So stay resilient. And commissions are not disappearing. They are still negotiable, always been negotiable. So that's our mantra going forward. They're not disappearing. They are still negotiable. So let's take a look at the key terms of that settlement and how that directly impacts us. One, starting mid-July, there is not going to be a broker compensation in the MLS. So right now, kind of at the bottom of the screen, it might be small if you can see it. This is what it typically looks like. It says, hey, there's a buyer broker amount of 3%. That is going away. So it can no longer be communicated through the MLS, but they were very clear. It can be an off MLS negotiation. So this needs to go into effect by July of 2024. I think they'll actually hit this deadline. There's a chance they push it out, but it's pretty easy to go in most of the MLSs and add and remove individual fields. So I think that's why it's such a quick turnaround. And we're going to go through this. And then once I get through the presentation, I'll open it up for questions at the end. And I'm going to answer some of the tough questions as well before we get into that Q&A forum. So the question is, yep, I'll get into some of that. Why can't we negotiate commissions in the contract? Because you guys have probably always heard the contract is an agreement between the buyer and the seller. It's not between the brokerage firms. And you can't negotiate your commission in the contract. And this is why. According to NAR Standard of Practice 16.6, you are not able to attempt to modify the listing broker's offer of compensation. So if they offer 1%, 2%, 3%, we cannot get into any specifics on percentages or what typical rates are. But whatever they offer in the MLS, you can't modify that. That's always been clear. Well, there's a huge change, right? Starting July 1st, there's a huge change. There's no longer an offer of compensation in the MLS. So we are going to start negotiating our commissions right in the contract. And yes, we can ask the seller for it. We can put it in the contract. We'll be able to do all of these things. And right now, there's 3 different ways that they're going to allow you to get paid going forward. So commissions are not disappearing. One, you can get paid directly by your buyer. We are revamping our buyer broker agreements. We are going to go through one sample today, but those will be revamped. The Ohio Association of Realtors is revamping theirs. We're revamping ours. I'm sure NAR. So we will get paid directly from the consumer at times, but I don't think that's going to be most of the time. Now, we can also get paid directly from the seller. And it's really easy, right? Seller to pay X% of allowable buyer cost. You put that in the contract. You can put this in the contract right now. This is not saying you're changing what's offered in the MLS. You're saying, hey, you're paying X amount of allowable buyer cost. We have a couple lenders that's going to go through a couple of ideas and a couple slides that's going to show your maximum contributions and things like that, because this might not always be the best way. This, number 3, I think is going to be the best way. You can also get paid your buyer agent commission according to the settlement as a portion of the listing broker's compensation. So I think that's huge. As agents, as we're going out there, we should still be going and getting an amount that's comfortable to pay us and offer a buyer agent. It's not going to be offered in the MLS, but it's going to be in contracts. There may be a separate agreement between brokerage firms. I don't like that the brokerage firms will actually sign the purchase contract because I don't like being a part of that. But there will be, well before July, another way for you to get paid from the listing broker's compensation. And we can make some policies and procedures and steps that say, hey, yes, you can still get paid from the listing broker's compensation. And, just a quick story, just yesterday, I don't know if she's on this call or not. I was helping one of our agents with a commercial real estate transaction. And to be clear, in commercial real estate, there is no offer of compensation. So right in our commercial contract, it states we want to be paid X%, and that's negotiable. So this is just a quick story to show you how negotiable it is. Whenever our agent reached out to them, they said, hey, yeah, we plan on paying a 2.5% buyer agent fee. So that's not standard. It's negotiable. So when we wrote the contract, it was less than list price, and we wrote that we want 3%. Well, they countered the price and they countered the commission down to 2.5%. So then we agreed to the price and we countered back with 3%. So literally all the seller had to do was agree to come up from 2.5 to 3. And there's lots of people saying, well, how's that in our client's best interest? Well, we have a buyer broker agreement signed stating that our client's going to pay 3. So now they don't have to pay it. They're the ones signing the counter, and then they sign. Even though initially offered 2.5, the only sticking point was the commission, and they sign. If you do the math, it was not a ton of money going at 0.5%. So you can specifically just negotiate and counter commission. Terms of the settlement part 2, you must enter into a written representation agreement with their client. It's important to note that it says a written representation agreement. It doesn't say exclusive. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. So the written representation agreement, you're able to go out there, get that signed, and you're supposed to get that signed before touring a home. And I know this is a huge change, but it shouldn't be for those of you that are doing the things right already. You're supposed to get that consumer guide signed on the first substantial meeting. So now you're going to get that consumer guide signed, and the written representation agreement. I think we're dropping the word exclusive from the document, and we're just going to say it's a representation agreement. So this also goes into effect in July. We're going to make sure that we start helping our agents early in getting this done. And we're going to go through an example representation agreement. So there's an easy way to introduce this now. We say, hey, Mr. Buyer, the National Association of Realtors says that we have to get this signed. Very easy. And we're going to go through some common objections when we go through an example. And so here's how I'd introduce that. I'd say, hey, look, the National Association of Realtors makes us get this signed. A written representation agreement will outline what services are provided to you, the value that's provided to you, and how much the service is. And that's how I would introduce it to a buyer. When they hear the word required, they should just comply. So once we do that, is great. Now, a lot of you may be thinking, well, what if another agent isn't forcing the client to sign it? You should tell that buyer, sounds like the other agent hasn't been educated on the most up-to-date rules in real estate or aren't ethical, but this is required by every realtor in America. So if they're already not doing that, that should be a red flag to you, Mr. Buyer. And then what I want you guys doing right now is starting now, right? So we have to have those for anyone starting in July. Well, I don't want you to start working with someone and then write offers later, and then they come back and say, I don't want to sign this. So let's start making it a part of your practice right now. We got to get ahead of the curve. We need to practice. And if you practice now and you don't get it, that's okay. It's not required, but I love for you to practice before it's actually required. So let's take a look at an actual, let's take a look at an actual agreement. So we are changing this and we'll be uploading it to our redonerealty.loop. But let me see if I can make this a little bit larger here. No problem. This, I think we're dropping the word exclusive. So we'll see what the attorneys and everyone thinks about that, but we're going to say it's a representation agreement. So we're going to say focus on representation agreement entered into an agreement between us and the client. The purpose is to grant, and I think this stays in there, the exclusive right. So we tell them, hey, we're going to be the ones helping you. I don't know that we use the word exclusive, just like I don't like using the word contract. I like agreement. The term is typically going to be for a year. The duties of the agent, we're going to update this with a little bit more value. The duties of theirs. And then we get into compensation. This is fully negotiable. So whatever you negotiate is what you're going to get here. So you can negotiate a flat fee. You can negotiate a percentage. And I know there's some people that say, I hate these. If the client doesn't want to work with me, I'm not going to force them to. And that's okay. You don't have to force them to work with you. Now, you have to get this document signed. So there's an alternate compensation agreed. If you're that realtor that says, look, I don't want to work with these at all, go in here and say, right, this alternate compensation, put a 0. You can cancel at any time. Pretty easy. It really doesn't change how you do business other than getting one additional document signed. Now, I don't recommend you do that. I think it's a problem in our industry. For those of you who've been through our training, you know that we've been trying to get agents to use these representation agreements. We do it for every single seller when we represent them. We should do it for the buyers. So I think you negotiate it. So up here, if you were to put 2, 3, 4, 5, 6%, whatever you put for helping with them, down here, I'd say, hey, look, if you choose to terminate this, there's an alternate compensation agreement of 1/2 of the fee. And that's not going to work, but 1/2 of the fee. So you can go in and negotiate this. So maybe if they want to terminate, they pay you half. They say you find, home on your own or you don't want to work with me, you pay half. And it's negotiable, right? You can go down to 1/3, maybe 1% of 3. You can go down to 25% of that fee. negotiate with them. You got to start negotiating. You got to build your value. You got to show them value. And I'm going to show you some classes we have coming up that's going to help with that. Because the next section, most likely in every agreement, is going to have termination. And the way ours is written right now, it says either party may terminate this at any time, and you pay as outlined in the compensation in section 5 above. So you say you terminate and you pay 100% of the fee. You terminate, you pay half, it's negotiable, but pretty easy. If you say, hey, look, I'm having a hard time getting this, make it down to 0. Will you not get paid on something? Quite possibly. But will that buyer not work with you? This should not be a roadblock to you working with clients if you take that path. Professional advice and assistance, additional provisions. We're going to go in and see if you can add something. It says seller to, let's do this. Buyer agrees to have buyer agent compensation in every contract. We don't use percentages, so we're saying X percent or X fee. So the agent will seller pay X fee to all contracts submitted. So we're working on this language, but basically we want the buyer to agree on every contract that we submit. Ideally, we're committing them up here to whatever it is. And now we're saying, hey, look, every contract that we submit, we're going to say whatever that fee is, we're going to add that to every contract that says seller to pay that fee. So we can add that to the contracts right now. The seller can pay that fee. So it's 2 ways for you to overcome that objection. 1, if you want to take it down to 0, you can. I don't recommend that. Maybe take it down to half. 2, we can put, hey, in every contract, we're going to add seller to pay X% of buyer agent commission. And obviously I didn't write this really well, but we will have the one updated in our loop. It's already updated in our dot loop, but we want to ask the seller to pay for it. So the 2 biggest objections, I don't want to be locked into a contract. Great. You can terminate for half, third, quarter, 0, your choice. I don't want to pay it. Great. We can ask the seller pay it. And then from there, you can say, we will accept whatever the seller offers. Very scary for you. But as this is written, we're going to say, hey, we're going to negotiate and attempt to get the seller to pay for it. And then if they don't, you're responsible for it. So how you do that is up to you and your client, and you got to go through some of our negotiation classes. Let me see, where is that? I lost myself. Here we go. So let's talk about some classes. So this coming Wednesday, March 20th at 6 p.m., we have overcoming obstacles. Well, this is a huge obstacle and we are going to overcome it. So full 2 hours this Wednesday at 6 p.m. about overcoming obstacles, overcoming changes. We'll talk about how this impacts working with buyers, how this impacts working with sellers. We're going to cover some of those tough questions. And then there's lots of different things as well. So mark your calendars. It's on red1agent.com on our calendar. Post NAR settlement changes, April the 9th at 10 a.m. We're going to have a class. Expert negotiations. You guys got to be better negotiators. You are now negotiating your commission. It's been fairly easy in the past, and you're going to have to work for it. The people that sharpen their skills, the agent that go above and beyond, are going to continue to make the income that they need to. The people that don't become better negotiators, that don't take the classes to overcome this, may struggle. So you guys are doing the right thing. For those of you who couldn't get on the call, I sincerely apologize. I did not know we had a 100 limit. But also, the Ohio Association of Realtors is putting on a class specifically for buyer representation agreements. So we are attending this class You guys need to book it ahead of time. I don't know if it fills up. It's online. It is $30. It's an hour and a half of CE, but we got to make sure that we take a look at what our leadership is putting out for us. So when Ohio Realtors revamps theirs, rolls that out May 22nd, we hope to have ours rolled out May 23rd, 24th, well ahead of that July timeframe. And then I think you guys are an environment, a product of your environment. Go out there, get an audio book, get the physical hard book of Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It is a great book on negotiating. We got to sharpen our skills. So we're going to have one April 10th. Let's read a book. Let's really get into negotiating. And that's all everyone wants. They want us to go out there and show that real estate commissions are negotiable. You guys hone your negotiation skills and be able to effectively give your value to consumers. And we're not going to see major changes. We're not going to see that significant downward pressure on commissions if you're a real estate professional and expert. So please attend the listing classes. Those are coming up. Attend our Survive and Thrive. Education is going to be more important than ever. And I'll give you a quick tip real quick that I've talked to hundreds of agents. I recently talked to someone about 2 weeks ago. He's been licensed for 10 years. And I said, hey, how many people that are not buyers, how many people that are not buyers do you have set up on an auto search in Flex MLS? And he's like, none. Why would I have them set up on an auto search? And I told him, you should set up everyone, friends, family, acquaintances. If I go to your house, I want you to set up, I'm going to set you up on an auto search. And that's what you guys need to do as agents. So if you go over to someone's house and you're watching the Super Bowl or playing euchre or a cookout this summer, just say, hey, I offer a program where every Sunday I send you a list of every new listing in your neighborhood. And you get to go in there and take a look at it. And if you like, I'll send it to you and it sells as well. But it's free for you guys. It keeps you top of mind. And people like looking at homes. Take a look at Zillow. It's worth millions of dollars. Some of our agents pay them thousands. Take a look at homes.com. They're spending $1 billion because consumers like looking at homes. Don't let them go there. All your friends, family, acquaintances, if they know that they can get an email from you every Sunday that has it, great. And if you see people looking every Sunday, because you can check in the email and say, hey, would you like it more often? And then they'll stop going to those other sites. They'll wait for your email. They'll rely on you. You're top of mind. And they're going to see, oh my gosh, look at home prices. They're higher than I thought. They don't drive by every road in the subdivision, right? They probably just go to their home and, 2 streets behind them could be a listing. And then when they do reach out to you, they're an educated seller. They know every listing that's hit their market and they hopefully don't have unrealistic expectations. So if you don't take anything away from this, start being listing oriented, get into our classes. We cover this in classes, and we want to make sure that you go out there and start being listing oriented. And this is easy, right? All of you can do this. When you get off this call, set something up for your mom, dad, uncle, brother, cousin, kid, whoever it is. You know the email address for some people in your sphere. Go set it up, start this process, and be able to get that done. Now, I am not a mortgage expert, but I have a couple of mortgage experts on the call with us. So, Troy, if you can unmute yourself, just wanted to ask you a question. There's significant changes, and I don't know if we can get 3% buyer agent costs plus additional things. So, I wanted to reach out to Troy. He is the newest member of Motto Mortgage One. Make sure you use Motto Mortgage One. There's several other Motto mortgages out there. But while he's new to us, Troy is an old man. He's been doing this for like 20 years. That's his high school glamour shot there, which is great. But Troy, if I know you've seen all this in the news, as a mortgage expert coming to you, what do agents need to know right now based on this change?
So right now, mortgage guidelines haven't really caught up or made any changes. I think they're waiting to see how the lawsuits progress before they make any changes. And I'm going to put this on Facebook when we're done today, guys. Don't need to jot this down, but as far as max seller concessions, there are maximum amounts you can ask for the seller to pay towards the buyer's cost. The other thing you need to be aware of is when they give that credit, that seller credit can only go towards closing cost and prepaids for taxes and insurance. Okay, so if a seller pays the agent commission, that's fine, but they can't pay an agent commission out of the closing credit to the buyer. FHA and USDA out in rural properties are very standard. They're a flat 6%. VA is a flat 4%. And then conventional gets a little dicey depending on the down payment. So when you have a buyer that's putting 10% down or less, they can get up to 3% credit. If they're doing 10% to 25% down, it goes up to 6%. And if you have a conventional buyer putting more than 25% down, they can get up to 9%. And then lastly, rental properties on conventional are capped at 2%. So the market looks at rentals as just not a necessity. They look at it as more of a business venture. So they're going to limit the closing credit you can get on a rental. And once again, I'm going to post the chart on that. But the biggest thing to consider though is, that's just going towards title fees, lender fees, escrow for taxes and insurance. And then the other thing to keep in mind to simplify things is the way you ask for it on the contract. A lot of agents will say, seller agrees to X amount of dollars in lieu of repairs, something along those lines, because they think it protects all parties. No lender wants to see that. The first question an underwriter is going to ask is what repairs? Do we have to be worried about those repairs? Are they dangerous to the property safety? What's going on with them? So the only verbiage you ever need when it comes to a closing credit is seller agrees to pay X amount of dollars towards buyer's cost. There's no explanation required, just the amount they agree upon. And because of these limitations and different loan types, it's very important to talk to us before making an offer. We want to structure it to the best advantage of your client. We want to maximize every single penny we can.
Perfect. Thank you. So what if the buyer has a buyer broker agreement in place that says, hey, I'm going to pay X% to you as my buyer agent. So now that's a buyer cost. If we write in the contract that the seller to pay, 3% of allowable buyer costs, do you think any of that can go towards the buyer agent commission?
It can on any loan currently except VA. VA has kind of put their feet in the sand. They will not allow the buyers to pay for seller commissions.
Wait, is this Kyle Dines?
The
The Kyle Dines. So VA, if I have a VA buyer, are you saying that the seller can't pay any contributions?
Well, the seller can give contributions up to 4%, like Troy was saying earlier, but the buyer cannot, the verbiage in the contract can't show that that buyer is paying for any of those commissions.
Well, let me clarify too, real quick. Let's say the seller is giving a closing credit of 10 grand and the mortgage closing costs are 6 grand. The additional four left over cannot be used to the buyer's commission. They're two separate things. So if a seller agrees to pay a buyer's agent commission, that is separate of a closing cost credit to the buyer. They're two separate items.
All right, we need to double check with our lenders and see if they have a cost incurred if we say allowable buyer costs. So hopefully we see a change in that industry. Kyle, what else would you tell us about commissions that agents need to hear right now?
Just like Troy was saying earlier, it's going to all really boil down to verbiage. Nothing on our side has changed or is in the process of change. I think they're going to let this play out probably till August when all this kind of settles. But I would imagine there is going to be change coming. But for now, it's the same way as you guys doing it now. It's all going to come down to verbiage. How are you using those seller paid contributions? It boils down to in our in our atmosphere where we're at, there's not a lot of sellers paying closing costs anyway. So I'm not sure unless you've got an agent that's really working with people that, you know, are using the down payment assistance, stuff like that. I mean, it's just going to be, you know, verbiage as normal until these things really shake out.
We do have techniques to help you guys though out there. So if you're doing, if you're doing an FHA or conventional loan where their client has minimal funds to bring to closing, this won't work. But if they have flexibility, let's say they're putting 20% down, we can defer to what you guys want to do and use it to your advantage. So as an agent, if you're going to accept 2.5% instead of three, we're going to shout it from the rooftops to the client. Hey, Mr. Smith, you're obligated to three. They're taking 2.5. Look how much so and so is saving you. Look how much of your needs they're looking out for. Look how much they're saving. You want to get them everybody you know because they're a trustworthy agent. There's other agents holding the client accountable to come up for the difference. We have ways of adjusting their financing numbers where we can have them pay your extra 0.5% commission out of pocket, but still structure the loan so the numbers are similar to what they were before, sometimes even bringing less to closing. And I've done that on a number of occasions where everybody was thrilled.
Perfect. What about the language on the screen? So if we put into a contract that the seller to pay a buyer agent commission of 3% to Red One Realty, you think that's okay?
That is correct. Yeah. Currently.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yep. I know there's some questions coming in. We're going to get through these, go through some common questions, and then I will get to all the questions in the chat. Thank you, wonderful lenders. We are making some admin changes as well. So effective 4/1, so coming up really quickly, every time that you submit a file that doesn't have a written buyer representation agreement, you're going to get an email back that says, hey, this is going to be mandatory soon. It's going to remind you to practice before it's actually required. And then starting 6/1/2023, our admin team is going to return the file to you that say you don't have a written representation agreement. So a month before it's likely rolled out. And if you say, hey, look, I'm just not able to get it, we're going to push it through, but we want to start conditioning you for the change instead of just, automatically July 15th or whatever it is, doing it, and make sure that we're working towards keeping you compliant. So here's what you should do right now. You got to get more listings. That we have a listings class coming up. We have lots of classes coming up. We got to go out there and be more listing oriented. You got to be able to show your value. So keep in mind all the stuff that you do, the CMA, the market knowledge, the processes, the negotiations. There's a document out there like 148 things a realtor does. We're putting on a special class just for this. So take a look at that. I think it was April 9th. And then adapt and stay focused. You've got to adapt, you got to stay focused and start using those written buyer representation agreements now. They're coming, they should have been in place already, and I think that's perfectly okay. So let me go through these common questions and then we'll get into the open forum. So lots of people said, hey, here's some questions I have. So I wanted to cover the more important ones. For those of you who have other questions, put them in the chat. I'll go to those next. But let's say you have a buyer who says, I want to buy a home. Well, I have to pay my agent now. Well, the answer to that is it depends. When we discuss our buyer agreement, we're going to show you where we can ask the seller to pay for the commission. If you want me to, I can put that in every single offer, and we'll put that in our buyer agreement. Now, if the seller is not offering a commission, you could end up paying for there. And if they say, great, wonderful. And they say, oh, I don't make sure I don't pay. I say, great. What if we reduce that to half, a third? You got to negotiate from there. So easy way to say, hey, look, you don't have to pay it. And then as an agent, you can decide, you say, well, I'll put a termination clause in there where you pay zero. So I don't want this to stop you from getting clients if you don't like it. I don't want this to stop you from getting clients if this is the roadblock, but you got to have the written agreement in place. And then how you have the termination is completely up to you as you run your independent contractor business. Now we have a seller, right? The seller sees this on the news. And by the way, we get more news geared towards us than what they do. So you'll have some sellers that see this and some that won't. So if a seller comes to you and says, hey, I want to sell my home, do I have to still pay a commission? Your answer should be yes. You still have to pay a commission to work with real estate professionals. Commissions have always been negotiable. Now, as a seller, they're probably more negotiable now than ever. So here's what I offer at 4, 5, 6, if your goal is to get 5. Here's what I offer at 5, 6, 7, if your goal is to get 6, and then go into some different plans. So we are going to roll out a 5, 6, 7 plan recommendation that you can edit and make a copy and says, here's what I do at 5, here's what I do at 6, here's what I do at 7. Most people choose the middle, but you can put this 2, 3, you can put whatever you want. Commissions are negotiable. So when you sit there with them, here's the different options, talk about what they want, show the value in your plan, show the value of paying a buyer agent, because the seller can pay that buyer's agent. This was a good one. Someone said, do you think multiple offers will impact negotiations? And they're going to. I'm really bad at math, but let's say there's a property out there for $100,000. It's now August. There's 0 offered in the MLS. And on that $100,000, you write an offer that says, hey, I'll give you 103,000, and seller, you need to pay 3% commission or whatever you negotiate. Someone else writes 100,000 and their buyer is paying their fee. Well, if it was 3, that 103 minus the 3% versus 100 is exactly the same. So then you need to make sure that you look at inspections, remedies, timeframes, appraisal gap, etc. We're already seeing a lot of this happen, right? Those of you that are writing offers right now, you know there's multiple offers, you know people are waiving remedies, you know they're asking for appraisal gap. And it's only going to get hotter if the market rates come down, which lots of people are anticipating will happen in July, right in the heat of our busy season. So make sure you take a look at that. Someone also asked, are buyer broker agreements going to be enforceable? That is a great question. So right now, when that buyer signs that written agreement that says, yes, I'll do it for whatever percent you negotiate, 2, 3, etc. Right now, are those enforceable? They are. Do they get enforced? Not normally. So this is not a procuring cause or going after the commission offered in the MLS. There is no commission in MLS. So we have to go after the buyer. That agreement is with the brokerage firm, and the brokerage firm would have to sue the buyer. I am not a big fan of suing consumers. I have been through it multiple times, and every time one of my agents call me and say, hey, I want to sue a buyer, I say, we've done it before. Here's what happens. One, they make an ethics complaint against you at the board, at the division. So now right off the bat, it's free for them. It's super easy to do. Now you're dealing with an ethics complaint. And most agents I talk to, they say, that's fine. I did nothing unethical. Very true. Probably not. But also you have to take time to do everything, respond to it, show up. It just defocuses you. It distracts you. And then in addition to that, once you sue them, you know what typically happens? You get countersued. So now you're countersued, the brokerage is countersued. Now you're filing E&O claims. And not only are you working on suing them, you're working on defending yourself, because they're going to file that ethics claim and countersue you. It's happened every single time. I don't know if a couple of our agents are on this call that this has happened to, but I've seen it. So I don't want to sue consumers. It's bad. Take a look and see how many brokerage firms sue consumers. So find a way that they can exit that. But as far as enforceable, where we're going to sue consumers, I still think that's a long way off. But maybe that changes on May 22nd. May 22nd, our leadership at Ohio Realtors is going to come out, give us a little bit more information, change some of that, and we'll kind of see what happens. Yeah, this is a good one. Will my NAR fees go up? And part of the announcement says they're not going up this year. Are they going to go up next year? Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's no way NAR comes up with $418 million based on the current assets and cash they have. They don't have that much cash to pay over the next 4 years. But there's an easy way to go get that money. So you take that 418 million divided by 1.5 million realtors over 4 years, and that's about another $67 per year. So I would be shocked if your realtor fees next year from the National Association of Realtors don't go up $70. They got to pay it somehow. I think that's why they structured it this way. And it's unfortunate that the jury awarded this large amount, but jury trials are so wild and unknown. And this is what happened. And this is a way forward. Keep in mind, they're trying to protect us. Any brokerage firm that did under $2 billion in 2022 is covered. So it's settled, it's done. You can't be sued. The brokerage firm can't be sued, which is huge, right? If you're with a brokerage firm that did under 2 billion, which Red One Realty did under 2 billion in 2022. Now we might do over 2 billion this year. So that year is actually really important to us. But you're covered, the brokerage is covered. If they came out and said we had to pay, hundreds of millions of dollars in settlements, we don't know if we could survive. So very important that that the National Association of Realtors did that. So the question I'm getting is, do we have to be a member of the NAR? How can we leave NAR? And, is there real value there? And, there is value. It's really tough to see right now. But part of the reason that they settled was to protect all of us, to make sure that you can't individually be sued, because maybe that was coming down the pipe. We see some big teams already been sued. They're now protected. They want to do what's best for us. And you never know. They could have appealed, and that next jury could have been worse. We've seen juries just be wild, and this is certainty. It's a path forward. It doesn't have to significantly impact your business. We can continue. Buyer agent commissions are not disappearing. This is a good one. What will happen to procuring calls? I get questions from agents and they say, I showed the property first. I've been working with them. Just because you have a buyer agreement in place doesn't automatically mean you were the procuring cause. A lot of times it's who showed the property, who introduced them property, who wrote the offer, etc. Well, this is going away. There's not going to be any more procuring cause because there's no offer of compensation. What we go through in procuring cause and arbitration is that unilateral offer of compensation in the MLS. Well, that's gone. So there will be no more procuring cause. Make sure that you are writing it into your offers and make sure you're getting paid in that written agreement with your buyer. So lastly, before we get into, looks like I got a couple more slides. Make sure that you're showing your value. Go into all of these things. Make sure you're showing them a net to seller. Ask them, who negotiates, who pays for title insurance. Show them 184 things a realtor does. I think the last one said 148. But use a presentation with all your buyers. We have presentations on Red One Agent. Click file, make a copy, edit that. We're going to update all of our stuff within the next 30 days to make sure that we are well ahead of this. So all you need to do now is get that written agreement in place. Get that written agreement in place. We talked about a couple of the obstacles and objections to easily overcome those. And make sure that you're letting everyone know commissions are negotiable. It is in most new listing agreements now as well. So we may see a little bit more downward pressure on commissions, especially if you're in an area that was consistently getting 6%. Many areas were not getting 6% already. They saw, different structures where it's 3% on the first 100 and 2% thereafter, or 1% thereafter. There's different graduating scales. So now that this is going to be a point of topic, there will be some downward pressure. Sharpen up your skills, show your value, and start prospecting more. If this will impact you and you're maybe miss a deal or two, well, go get another deal or two in your books. Start looking at your return on investment. If it costs you a deal or two, what's your marketing budget? I know that lots of people are still paying their brokerage firm $15,000, $16,000, $21,000, $24,000. Is that a good investment? When you pay that money in, what are you getting back? There's lots of companies, including Red One Realty, that have plans under $5,000. And, here's what I've been saying all year. Those agents that work on their business, they put the time in, they're going to be in the next group of top performers. So hone your negotiation skills, hone your value, be a professional. Buyers and sellers are still looking for those people. But if you're an agent who hasn't attended training, hasn't gone through things, it's going to be really tough for you to overcome these objections and obstacles and deal with clients, especially if they're going out there Googling and you're not. working on your business. So I want to see you guys as the next group of top performers. I'm going to go into the questions in the notes and kind of start there. I apologize, the meeting has been maxed out. Someone says, will the written representation agreement be a separate document from the exclusive buyer broker agreement? Yes. So the written representation agreement is going to replace the exclusive buyer broker agreement. I just don't like the language. It's gonna be a very similar document, but I don't like that it says exclusive buyer broker agreement. I love what NAR did. They're calling it a representation agreement. Hey, buyer, I'm going to go represent you. So most of us call it the listing agreement when talking to sellers. Now we're talking about a representation agreement when talking to buyers. Most of us, even though the document is called the exclusive right to sell, we don't call it that whenever we're speaking with the sellers. Georgia agents. Yes, I know we have Georgia agents on here. Georgia, you guys already have this form, right? So you have had this requirement for quite some time and you still sell real estate. So Greg will put out some updates there as well. The Georgia Real Estate Commission, those of you in Florida on the call as well. Every state is different, but going forward, starting in July, everyone will need that. But look, guys, all these agents in Georgia have been required to have this document for a long time, and realtors still exist. Compensation is still paid. The sky is not falling. Someone says, how are buyers going to be able to afford to pay us? They work with a lot of people that are already using down payment assistance grants and don't have closing costs. Yeah, that's going to be tough. You need to negotiate with those buyers right up front that say, hey, in this agreement, we need to put in here that the sellers are going to pay that, and make sure you're able to put that in every agreement. So I negotiate right up front with your buyer, let them know you're putting that in there, and then you can negotiate with them and say, hey, in the event that they don't pay, what you're willing to work for and what they're willing to pay.
Hey, Mike, can I contribute to this real quick?
Yes, sir.
Don't forget too, you can always negotiate a slightly higher price if you have an interested seller. Go 5, 10 grand over the price, and then get them to agree to paying the buyer's agent with that increase in price. It's the same net benefit to the seller.
Yeah, that's great. If you put in that agreement, for any reason the seller won't pay, the max that they'd have to pay is 5K, and maybe they go 5K over list to offset that. It'd be interesting to see how this impacts appraisals later. But the seller has been paying this commission for years, and the seller's been paying it, and it's already seems like it should be built in to what they're appraising. So it'd be interesting to see how our appraisal industry does it. But thank you, Troy. Easy way. 5K over, pay your 5K, 9K over, pay your 9K, whatever that is. Someone says, I'm not understanding the lender's information on if sellers can pay realtor fees. So I think what Troy was saying earlier, closing costs and buyer agent commissions are two different things. So if you go back to that document I showed you in our dot loop, we specifically put in there that the seller will pay X% of buyer agent commission. So buyer agent commission and closing costs are two separate things. So that's, I think, where he was going.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, we got a major question. In this tight inventory market, do we really think we're going to be able to switch over to asking for commission closing costs in a contract? That will be a major factor in buyers' offer getting accepted unless it is immediately commonplace. I think it will be immediately commonplace July 15th. I really do. I think whenever we see that go away, I think that everyone's going to ask for this because there's going to be so many calls. You getting prepared literally within 24 hours is huge on your part. So I think it will be commonplace when we see that go away in the MLS. I really do. Now, will it be negotiable? Yeah, it's always been negotiable. Ask for it. I'm telling you, we just negotiated a commercial deal. I know they had other offers, other interests, and we still got 3%. You could offset it with price. Offset it with price. Someone says, can the buyer agent commission be announced in the agent to agent? No, sir. So it cannot be communicated through the MLS. So that is definitely one of the big changes. I would love for it to say can't be public, but it cannot be communicated through the MLS. And now someone says, I wonder if we can upload a document from a listing agent offering a certain commission. That is a good question. So I would love to see that document section, have it there, but I don't know if they're going to argue and say that's still being communicated through the MLS. So I think that there's a good chance an additional document will come out. I don't know that's going to be on the MLS, but maybe, you know, before you write that offer, it's already in dot loop. You send it as a buyer agent over to the listing agent and say, hey, are you agreeing to pay whatever percent you've negotiated? And if they sign that, yes, I think that'd be a really easy way. But I don't know if it can be in the document section. I am really hoping and pushing, and that is my number one goal with Ohio Association of Realtors, because this is a NAR rule, and we'll see how it gets regulated on the back end from the government. But if the Ohio Association of Realtors says yes, that would be an easy fix. Someone says many buyer agents go directly to a listing agent to write the offer. What words of wisdom do you have on that front? So so the buyers may go around their buyer agent directly to the listing agent and write the offer. That is why that written agreement's in place. And those written agreements are there for the psychology of the buyer. When that buyer signs something that says, yes, we will work with you, and yes, there's a penalty. If not, great. Now, will they skip that and go directly to the listing agent? Possibly. I could see where that could happen. I think that if you explain your value and show what you do and say, hey, look, if you're not represented and there's a professional with negotiation and experience representing the other side, are you really coming out ahead? So that's where I have to show your value and get that written representation agreement signed. Someone says, why are we still with NAR? Well, in our market, it's almost a requirement. If we're not with NAR, we don't get access to the MLS. What they've done for us, it doesn't seem like a lot, right? So they let realtor.com go. They now lost this judgment. I don't think them losing the judgment is, 100% their fault. You never know what a jury's going to do. They see a bunch of rich realtors up there and they say, oh, you guys make all this money. We know it's not like what's on TV, but these jurors are like, oh yeah, look at all this commissions that have paid to all these rich agents. And that's just normally not the case. So we can't leave. And if you take a look at Redfin made this huge announcement. We're leaving in markets that aren't required to be members of the MLS. In all 50 states, that is 2 markets. In Ohio, Redfin is a member of NAR. They're in the MLS. So until something else comes out there, we will continue to be a member of NAR for the foreseeable future. Would I love another option? Absolutely. Will there be an appeal? No, there is no appeal. That's one of the things they considered. They considered appealing. It would create years of uncertainty. Don't know if it would be better or worse. It'd be very expensive. There is no appeal. Instead of appealing, they've chose to settle. Someone says, so just to confirm, we can't ask for the seller to pay a buyer broker commission on the purchase contract. Only document we can use. No. So in the purchase contract, you can request that the seller pay the commission. Yes, you can put that in there. And let me see if I can go back to that document. Something like this, you can certainly do. Seller to pay a buyer agent commission of 3% to Red One Realty. You put this in the document with your buyer, and then you can add this to every purchase contract. So yes, you can absolutely negotiate your commission. Someone says, what will be the verbiage to add to an offer to have seller to pay over list price for commission, but is not subject to the appraisal? I think if you're increasing the price to cover your commission, that price is still subject to appraisal. So obviously this is brand new. The lenders are going to have to adapt to this. The appraisers are going to have to adapt to this. We're a very adaptive environment. I think by July, a lot of the worry and uncertainty will be gone. But as it stands right now, it's going to have to appraise that purchase price for most contracts. What about Tier's question above on how this will affect listing agreements? Not sure this got addressed yet. Uh-oh, did I skip Tier's question? Where is that question? How will our listing agreements change? I know we spell out commission amounts on there. So your listing agreement is going to change. The Ohio Association of Realtors, Columbus Realtors, every board, every single one of them is going to change. So I know we spell out commissions there. I'm recommending you make little changes. So if I was going to go out there and list a property for whatever percent it is, right? Whatever you negotiate. Let's say I go out there, if I'm doing this listing, I'm still going to attempt to get the maximum I can for the buyer's agent. I think that's in the seller's best interest still. So I'm going to get enough in there to pay me, and I'm going to get enough in there to pay the buyer's agent. It's just negotiable. And I'm going to tell them, I would love to tell you how great I am as a realtor, and I'm going to get you the best offer myself without compensating anyone else. But the fact is, there's almost 10,000 other realtors that probably one of them has a more motivated buyer that might bring you more money, that might offset that 3% or whatever fee that you're offering to them. So I still want commissions for both in the listing agreement, because I believe that we're going to find a way that says, hey, we can't offer that commission in the MLS. I think we're going to find another way to share it. So I would not change that much. It's not going to say that we're going to offer it in the MLS, but I think we'll still offer. Someone says, well, we have a separate compensation agreement like commercial. I think so. I think there'll be another document coming that says, hey, here's the compensation agreement. I can certainly see that coming. I can certainly see one between brokerage firms that says, hey, you're not offering the MLS, but we can negotiate a buyer agent commission from your listing commission. So yes, I could wholeheartedly see another one. Do we still negotiate with sellers to pay 6% commission? Well, not 6, but whatever you feel is right? It can't be fixed. But yes, if you choose 6 on the listing agreement, yes. And you can offer 3% to the buyer's agents, just not on the MLS. So 100%, if that's what you chose to do, was ideally with an individual seller, you negotiated 6 and offered 3, you can certainly still do that. And the listing agreements will change. So we will get those updated. Yes, I will share the slides as well. Someone says, how many listing agents are going to ask 6% and offer 0 to the co-broke? I think a lot, and the public will be screwed. It's definitely going to happen. I see some listing agents getting more than buyer's agents now. I see some getting 4 and 2. I saw someone the other day 5 and 1. So it definitely happens. So ideally, and a lot of times what we put in our commercial agreements is that, hey, we want the buyer broker agreement or the buyer agent commission to be 3% or half the total commission, whichever is greater. So I think that would help with that. And that's going to be an agreement between you and the listing agent. So if you say, hey, I want X% or 50% of the commission, whichever is greater, I think that will help. But yeah, it is entirely possible that some people get 6% and a untrained buyer's agent who's not doing things right, not going to trainings like this, doesn't negotiate their money and they get 0, and that agent gets the full 6. It will happen. It shouldn't happen often to you guys, but it will happen to people that aren't preparing for this. Would putting a printout in the property for buyer's agents to view the compensation be a good idea? That is definitely a question for your seller. At the end of the day, you're able to offer that compensation everywhere except the MLS. So if I was offering, an attractive commission to buyer's agents, yes, as a seller, I would want to put that in there. So every single person that came through saw, hey, here's whatever, 9,000 reasons for you to sell this home instead of the other one. So yeah, if your seller would allow you to, 100% yes. Motto Mortgage, we need to get some type of document that we can leave in the homes that says, here's some typical price points, mortgages, and then on there somehow we need to put, yes, this particular seller is offering whatever that amount is and make it customizable.
Absolutely.
Joe, I hate to talk negatively about an area, but I will tell you, I feel like I wouldn't say they screw co-brokers, but I would say the Cleveland agents are harsher negotiators than other regions. I will tell you that. So, and those negotiations sometimes mean that it's not fair on both sides. I completely agree. But the question is going to be when you write that in there, it says, or 50% of the commission, whichever is greater, and you counter back, and the seller is seeing that, hopefully they will look at the bottom line numbers instead of the agent trying to get more money. Someone says requiring a buyer's agreement is fine, but how is that requirement enforced by NAR? I know we're going to require it for file compliance, but is that the only enforcement? It's too early to know. So given that it's out there and it's an NAR requirement, I don't think that is going to be governed by the state's legislative government. But also, very soon, I think the Department of Justice will come out and say, we like this. Let's make this part of every state's revised code. And at that point in time, when the Ohio Division of Real Estate or GREC or DBPR, wherever each state's licensing law entity is, then when you're audited, you can lose your license. I think that's coming, and I think it's not worth it to even think about it. So we're going to do it. It's already required by NAR. I could see fines from your local board. Sometimes we're randomly audited. I could see those fines at the agent and brokerage level. So we're going to enforce it and get ahead of this. Someone says, can we require the seller initials, that the seller initials the counteroffer form? I often get the listing agent says that's not happening when I ask for a fair split, and I know they didn't present it. Yes, you can ask for that, 100% ask it, but the division has come out and says that the other party should show receipt of offer, not must show receipt of offer. So I definitely see it's an issue sometimes. And I think if you push the issue enough, it's fine. If you say, hey, look, if you don't show me that you went out there and you presented this, even if you screenshot dot loop or have your client initial, I will be filing an ethics complaint. And it's going to take you all this time when right now you can just provide proof. So yeah, I think you push that and make sure that we get it, that the seller isn't doing it, it's not the agent. Perfect. We will be providing lots of information going forward. Let me see if I can find those classes. So I will make sure that we can get more than 100 people on the next couple of Zooms. There has to be a way we can upgrade our account. If not, we'll do it on a different platform. Mark says there is.
I said that'd be great. When some of us registered and couldn't get on, it was not a good moment.
Yeah, I sincerely apologize. I'm sure the Facebook group is not doing well. But we will make sure that we have more room, or we'll switch platforms to YouTube. I don't think YouTube has a limit, and we can go live in a special group there that only we can find. Lastly, thank you. Yep, thank you guys very much. So I will post this recording in the Facebook group. For big questions, please comment in our Facebook group. I'm gonna try to answer them there instead of individually. And for some of the questions we don't have answers to, let's pose them. This is brand new. Let's get all the answers. Please stay focused. Start attempting to get those written agreements signed, and we will continue to do what we do best. Because what we do is we help people buy and sell properties. We help them build wealth. We help give them the ability to retire. And the trained real estate professionals add a lot of value to that transaction. Thank you guys very much.